Hello, Savannah. Hello, hello, hello. Listen, I'm so excited about tonight's show. We are coming to you live, Kandily Kesha, welcoming our guests tonight, Mark Smith and Erma Smith, two dear associates and friends of mine who are probably the smartest and most compassionate people I know. And so I asked them to join me tonight to have a discussion about Afghanistan and America. We have so much going on. I've been coming to you live talking a lot about the plight of our city as it relates to crime, poverty, as it relates to the CARES Act funding, as it relates to your property tax increase that I didn't vote for, as it relates to a lot of what is going on in our community. I think COVID has presented a scenario where it's caused us to be somewhat disconnected and desensitized to those things that happen around us. So, like right now, um, New Orleans is under a great deal of pressure, strain, and stress with Hurricane Ida. My heart and prayers go out to the families and individuals who are affected by the hurricane. I know that several of our residents are hosting people who are fleeing New Orleans for safety and shelter. And we are grateful that we can provide some semblance of respite for those family members and friends. And we are hopeful that as millions of people are without electricity for probably an undocumented amount of time, they too will soon get back to some normality. In addition, we have, and before the hurricane, this issue with Afghanistan and America. And why, in the midst of all that we are going through here in Savannah, Georgia, in the midst of all that we are going through in America, why should we be concerned about such? Will refugees reach the borders of America as they already have? Will they reach the city limits of Savannah? And if they do, what will happen? Why is it that this is even an issue? The history in the background of what is happening and what has happened with Afghanistan and our partnerships and our lack of partnerships and our connection to that country. Why are we here? And so I have asked two people who, as I stated to you before in my introduction, one who I think is the smartest among the smartest people that I know, Mr. Mark Smith. This man knows a whole lot. A whole lot. You know how some people know a little bit about a lot of things? This man knows a whole lot about a whole lot of things. And so I'm happy to have him with us here tonight. And then we have my dear friend and angel, Erma Smith. This woman, I cannot say enough about her. She came into my life at a time when I was at an ultimate low, and our paths crossed not by accident, but by providence. And she worked her magic unbeknownst to her or me. And we did what God expects us to do, and that is to be a light on the path of each other's life. And Erma is the founder of School of Story, and she's a master storyteller. She has a gift of bringing people together and making magic out of their lives and out of their stories. And so I asked her to be here tonight because she has a heart for people near and far. And she's going to share a little bit about what she's learned about refugees and what we can do as Americans. But first, I want to have Mr. Smith kind of take us to school with regard to where we are, what we should be doing or what we should be thinking about, and how we can make a difference. Mark?
Thank you, Keisha Carter. My prayers for the people of Louisiana and Mississippi with this Hurricane Ida. I know they were hit hard, and I hope that they have an awesome recovery. Today at 3:29 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, August 30th, 2021, one of the longest conflicts the United States has been involved in officially ended. Right then, there was criticism. But technically, if you look at the time zone back in Afghanistan, it was 1 minute after midnight in Afghanistan, August 31st, 2021, and the war was officially over. When this war comes to mind, I can't help but compare it with Vietnam. It's 46 years ago, April 30th, we ended a conflict, almost same fashion, with the helicopter lifting off of the embassy in Saigon. The only difference with this ending is that I think the military did an admirable job in 18 days in bringing out close to 80,000 people, airlifting them out of Afghanistan. Why are we here? If you go back to 1978, when he had the first insurrection in Afghanistan with the Democratic Republic regime taking over, and in 79, we remember the Russians going in to support them. By 1992, they were out because we, the United States, supported the Mujahideen in defeating the Russians and forcing them out. Another incident, we want to put a pin in it, in 1993, the World Trade Center was attacked. We forgot all about that. In 1997, the Taliban comes to power in Afghanistan. And they're not fully in control of the entire country. And so it led for these rogue groups like ISIS to come there and do what they did. First thing that comes to mind with Afghanistan today, that there was no exit strategy going in. Unlike Desert Storm back in 1990-91, President H.W. Bush correctly elected to come out of Kuwait and Iraq and bring the troops home. However, you push it a few years later under his son's tutelage, we go in and we don't have no exit strategy. We're looking for Osama, we're looking for bin Laden. Well, we get bin Laden, but why are we still there? Well, we say that we're trying to help the people of Afghanistan, but that greed and corruption is just like Vietnam. It just went unchecked, just like in Iraq, just like in Syria. The greed is going unchecked. What are some of the things we need to look for at this war? It's come to an end. Yes, methamphetamines went down because during this war, the heroin addictions went up. But with the price of heroin soon to go up, you will probably see methamphetamines replacing it as the drug of choice. So yes, it does have a direct effect back here. The final thing is about the Afghans that have immigrated here into the United States. What beautiful thing is to have people from other countries come here with new ideas, wanting to be Americans. Just like in 1975, we brought in all those folks from Vietnam. Then we also brought in a special group from Vietnam called the Huns. Just recently in the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, we watched a gymnast of that descent win a gold medal on behalf of the United States out of Minnesota. And that was beautiful. That was beautiful. So overall, like you said, if we go into these countries, we have to win the souls and the hearts of these people. We have to provide literacy, which we were doing, but there were other things that we should have been providing. And there's a list, and I won't get into it because you have another guest. But in the short, we should have had an exit strategy going into Afghanistan. And I think President Bush, not Bush, but President Biden did an admirable job in 18 days just ending this process. We've been training the Afghan army for the last, I don't know how many years. They should have been able to at least put up some semblance of a fight, in which they did. And so here we are today, end of another conflict.
Thank you so much for that backdrop. I want you to give some thought to the notion of how there is a correlation between the efforts to help a country who essentially is, as we see now, incapable of helping themselves. The one thing I think about mostly is the work that we do in elected office and how you are working for the people, working on behalf of people, where we as Americans go into this country to help people who are being abused, who are essentially living under tyrannical leadership, from the lack of women's rights, human rights, and everything in between, only to, in the end, have people succumb to that pressure and not fight for themselves, even after we leave all of this arsenal, all of these military weapons, all of these supplies, all of these resources and firepower that we have given to them, that we have gifted to them, and them not be able to, in the end, help themselves. And essentially they buckle under the pressure. And we will throw it to Erma for the psychological implications of that. But I want you to think about this, Mr. Smith, and help us tie into how we here locally in our local government in America, in addition to in America, in our national politics, how we find ourselves fighting for people, but people who are incapable of just standing up and fighting for themselves. And then we find that if we don't continue to fight, we put ourselves further in harm's way. So think about that a little bit. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but think about that a little bit while we talk to Erma about the psychological and the emotional implications of all that I have described previous to us starting our conversation today, and how it plays on the psyche of people. You know, Erma, I open with how COVID has really created this huge vacuum of isolation for so many people. We are living in a time where churches are closed. That's for the introverts and people who are not people. That's the one place that they usually go to have some semblance of socialization. And as I spoke with you over the weekend, I talked about how I think in some regard we've become so desensitized to loss and death even. Because every other day we're hearing of a life lost to COVID. And now we have this war. We had a number of Marines who lost their life. We have these refugees who are losing their lives trying to flee into safety. What can you offer us, Erma, in terms of your understanding of your world of trauma and healing and hurt, and all of that, you know, that these refugees may be going through?
Well, as a foreigner, I understand leaving your homeland. Can you hear me well? Do you need me louder? Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Okay. I feel as a foreigner coming from South Africa, having lived through the struggles we had when the two different nations fought for rulership once apartheid was disbanded, and the violence and the fighting that happened there, it's scary. It is intense. It is traumatic. and coming to a new country, for me, even it's similar language, similar culture, but yet there's so many nuances that are different. I can only imagine when you don't speak the language and you have been in severe trauma. I think a few things happen if you're living in that year after year, as the nation has for the 20 years of warfare that has been going on there. Finally, coming to a new homeland and having to assimilate and understand what you've been through and what this is all about. This is my new home. Who are these people? How do I fit in? Can I find my feet? It's starting from scratch again, starting life from scratch. So, for the refugees that come in, and I was doing a bit of research, um, we're getting a lot of refugees are coming in, and there's a few centers that are being put in place for them. I know that here in our Savannah area, we have currently two families. One is arriving, has gotten out safely. The other, we're still waiting to hear if they are safe. And most of those in those two families are children. Now, children are resilient, and will probably learn quicker what their new culture and life is like. But um, knowing that with it all comes trauma, I think the amazing thing is that there is so much good in place in our country, which is so America, such a, I've been here 25 years, and it is definitely my homeland now, even though not my birthland. Um, we provide, we provide. If I look at the programs that are in place to help learn languages, finding jobs, there's so many that step up to the plate. This is an incredibly giving nation. And I think that's why still the desire, if there's a way to be, many still want to come here. When I look at it from an American's perspective, and I listen, part of my work is to listen to the stories of others, and the multifaceted emotions that Americans have, that we have about refugees coming here. I think, number one, it is important to know that those refugees coming, of course, we don't know who slips in, but for the most part, they are people that have been supporting our troops when we have been there. They have been people that have learned from us, that were working within their country,
Oh, wow.
building up the country with us. Those are
Mm.
coming here. So these are people that I would think that our troops are family with. Troop members that I know that have spent 20 years off and on in Afghanistan. Um, these are their people.
Mm-hmm.
To have our arms as local citizens should be open to them, not closed. I think with every good pocket of humans, there's that one that's not so good. Whether you're in a church or a business or a boardroom or wherever you are, there's always that one person that is. And so I think, yes, there will be that one in every cluster, probably, that comes through. And by God's grace, we can sniff them out, and that they would not harm anyone here. But I think what's good as Americans, as good humans, is to be there for those that are going through a hard time. It's hard when they're strangers. We come with bias, we come with prejudice, which makes in our life experience and the stories that we have endured. And it is
And
like,
you know what, Emma, I want you to elaborate a little bit more there, and I need you to be a little louder and closer to your mic. Prejudice and bias, and you said that we all come with it. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
well, and I think it's so. The first step is that you have to be willing and open to know that you have bias, that you have prejudice, uh, and not to beat yourself up about that, but be open to say, well, where would it be? My story, for one, I have worked hard because it's my work as a corporate trainer to work in this field. I've just finished my 5th book, Together We Are Stronger, where it deals with all of this. And I thought I had no prejudice and no bias. I thought I had worked through any layers that there might be in my life. And when you put yourself in the space of people that are different than you are, which means getting out of the community, being involved wherever you are, there's going to be someone that is different from who you are. And can you listen to them? Can you hear who they are? And if you feel any anger, upset, or prickliness, it is an indication to you that you have a story tucked in there somewhere. There is a hidden bias. There may be, the next step is really prejudice. The next is lack of respect. And then we act out towards one another. So I really advocate for us to really understand if we have bias, and then look in your own life story. Where did that come from? Children are not born with prejudice and bias.
Right.
They don't see handicap, color, origin. They don't see anything but another little person to play with, a fight with, whatever with, because its self is so strong. But it is taught, right? It is experienced. It is unseen. It is what we're given from our home, from our community, from our school. And so it sits deeply within each of us. And if you truly want to have a strong community, a strong workplace, you have to uncover those, and you have to be willing. You don't have to like everybody at first, but you've got to listen and say it's okay for us to be different and understand. So I think when we look at the refugees that will come in, yes, they are very different. They have lived a very different life. Can I not judge them because of where they come from and what we have endured, what our loved ones have endured? How many lives have been lost there? That may be a family member of somebody. And can we see them as who we are? Not all that different. We are different, but we're all the same. We have the same basic human needs, no matter where we come from. And I believe America has a huge heart. It's to be every human that can build that personal heart of a place where we have such respect for one another's differences that we can talk and we can say, win this round, I lose this round. Okay, this year that's who you stand for. This is who I stand for. And we do all the work that goes about getting our voices out. And others see it our way, but in respectful ways.
Yeah. And, I often think about America and her colorful past, her colorful existence. And in as much as we are so proud and privileged to be Americans, we would be remiss if we did not think about some of those, some of the ills of the foundation of America. And so, with that said, in the same breath, I am pleased to be a part of what we want America to be. And so, in that regard, we become the evolution of America, and that we get to write the history right now of a better America. And so, Mr. Smith, we can sort of end on that one a little bit because, I start these conversations and then it just gets a little bit deeper. I often go into these conversations with Dr. Teray, and then he takes me to a whole nother level, and I regret that I ever even opened the door to the conversation. But Erma has given us a lot. You know what? I just realized I have Mr. and Mrs. Smith on my show right now.
Oh, it's too fun.
How about that? I scored. I scored. So, she just talked to us about prejudice and bias and all of those pieces. I know I asked you to sort of give a correlation between the fact that, in as much as I can understand, after 9/11, the hope was we would go in as a partner, a friend of Afghanistan, and give them all of the support and help post 9/11. One, I would imagine a big part of that was intel, and two was to sincerely help this country. And we get in, we spend billions of dollars, and President Biden decides that it's time to get out, and not spend any more money. And in short order, we leave, and these people are now using the very weapons and support that we have given them to hurt their people and potentially position themselves to hurt us. And so I think that's the part where people can start to understand the dynamic of why is it that we, this huge power, why is it that we go in and not take control of these countries, but give them the support, spend the resources to undergird them so that, one, they don't mobilize to hurt us the way they did when they flew the planes into the buildings in New York, but two, to exhibit compassion for people. So how is it that we arrived to where we are today, and how do we make sense of it? Like, was it the right thing to do? Oh, did I lose him? He'll probably chime back in again. But Erma, what was it that you were able to learn in addition to the families who are going to be with us, who are coming to Savannah? Are they coming through a particular charity or organization? And how can individuals provide any support or help if they were inclined to do so?
Yes, you could go to Inspiritus, Inspiritus.
Okay, give us that one more time so that our producer can get that and put that in the chat.
Yes, so Inspiritus, and it will bring up the WEIN spirit.org, yspirit.org, and it's actually the renaming of the work that the Lutheran Church does. So it's their organization, and when you go there, there's where you can donate, sign up to be a volunteer. You can, sign up for the letter. They have a blog, and the blog keeps up to date. Like, it's got up to date about what's going on in Afghanistan. That's where you can see who's coming here. Is somebody here? Reach out to them. Then there's also the newest blog today about what's going on in Louisiana with the storm. So they have incredible work that they do with these major crisis moments. And you go through a training and you can learn the various skills that they teach that are required to help someone assimilate into our culture.
Okay.
I think it's one of the most powerful resources. Atlanta is getting a lot of refugees, but we'll get more. But they make sure that there is provision on every level for them.
Now, is there anything that any of our local churches can be doing, or nonprofit organizations who may be in position to absorb the blow of what this may mean to our community?
And again, I think it's getting in touch with them because they will place people, and they ask,
okay.
Does anyone have room in their home? Does anyone have an apartment or a house they're not using? Or a very reputable organization that when you know you're going to step into working with this, it is going to be done the right way, whether it's your time or your money, also used the right manner. At the School of Story, we're looking for Hope Doll stitchers.
Yes, I was going to ask you to tell us more about the School of Story. Give us while we wait for Mr. Smith to come back on. Tell us a little bit about the mission of the School of Story, and your new project, your new launch, and what we can expect that's coming up.
Well, in essence, we work with women and girls, stepping into their story, understanding the story, getting healing, and another word, obviously, story, your experiences in life, the challenging things, the strengths, the weaknesses, all that brings into your being. And when you understand them and you can place them well, you find your purpose in all of that. So healing is much part of that, writing your story. Our stories inspire others, and when you add skills to them, they are incredible tools to give each other hope and help during struggling times, preventing stress, anxiety, depression, and more that comes from all of that. So we know obviously COVID made life different, but we're getting back into uh, doing symposiums, coaching, um, all the classes, all the many amazing things we do, as well as sort of working on getting our own physical space where all this can happen. But one of our projects, how this was really all birthed, was part of the Hope Doll. And in fact, it was with the
Do
Syrian.
you have a Hope doll near you? Can you show us a Hope doll?
When he comes back, I'll go and get one from my shelf there. The
I
Hope
love the Hope dolls.
is, and it was really the Syrian crisis when the Syrian refugees a few years back, was many years back now, my heart just broke when I saw the pictures and realized what women and children were going through. And then it kind of, it spills over to your own town,
Mhm.
state, and your country. And I just, you get to feel, what can you do? What can one person do? And I was just in despair on my knees and said, God, I got to help. But I feel like there's nothing I can do. And then woke up in this whole little idea and designing this doll and thinking it's the dumbest thing ever. And realizing when I saw how they, in those areas, were clinging to little soft toys, that no, it's not dumb. And so the little Hope doll has a message in her pocket and a little bag of tea. And when you believe what the message is, you pass it on. And so I went through this same. I just finished my book last week, and that very night I woke up in the same place with what is going on with Afghanistan and the refugees, and found my heart just saying, "What?
Mhm.
What can we do? What
Right.
can we do? We got to do something." And I woke up and I'm like, "You've got a tool in your hand." So I realized I can take my book to further this of loving. And really, at the end of the day, the full outflow of having respect, which is letting go of your pride and your prejudice and all of that, is really to love one another deeply. That is a long life process, to love your neighbor fully. But let's at least respect them, right?
Mhm.
So as I'm on my journey to learn to love fully, I realize this book can do much, but if we've got the Hope doll. And right then, one of our council members called me and with the same heart, and she said, let's translate this into the Afghan language. I have access to possibly that we can get to where all the refugees are coming in this country.
Oh, wow.
We get,
And this is one of your council members in Effingham, is it?
she's actually in Austin. This is Shelley.
Oh, Shelley in Austin. Okay, yeah.
And so, wow, within seconds, I thought of the person who I know, who I contacted. I got a name of an Afghan who can translate into one of their two main languages there, um, into the language there. And so we'll be working on that. But we need a lot of Hope Doll stitchers. We need to stitch a whole lot of Hope Dolls. Oh my goodness. I'm just looking here.
I can probably average about one a week for you if you teach me.
That is so cool. So they're going to translate it into Dari. So it's a little warm welcome, a little comfort. And the message says, um, you are loved. Never lose hope and courage. There is always hope. And so we're going to translate that. And just so I feel that if each of us, we do all have a gift. We do all have a skill. We do all have a voice. And if each of us can use it in our creative, unique way to reach out to a neighbor. I love what you had said this year after COVID, and we are having a lot of outflow from that. There is a lot of hidden stress. I wouldn't say we're as fearful as we were in the beginning, but there's other things we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And in our community, you see it in so many varied ways. And if you think of the steps of loss and grief, and one of them being anger, that pops up in unexpected ways in everyone's life. So we're still dealing with, and you said it so well, with 2020 and trying to reestablish ourselves again in this year of 2021. And now we're called on to give a little more to one another. And isn't it remarkable that it is it the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this month?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of loss that our service members will feel. Besides post-traumatic stress that they come back with from the war, those that have done tours in these areas over these years, and what that does to families. And now for the war to be done, and the question asked, well, what was the point? So I've been pondering that. What was the point of a 20-year war that just ended, going back to where it started? And I have to go, well, thank you to every one of you that did fight the war, and all the many facets of what that means in a family. It was not in vain. We have had years here where we have been safe, and we have been steady, and we have continued to grow and expand in life. And we have to believe that no matter what is happening now, we can still live well. And it brings me to the very core of each of us as an individual again. Am I doing my best today? What does that mean for me to live today well so that I can have hope for tomorrow, no matter what it might seem like for the moment?
And I think the important takeaway from that, Emma, is recognizing that not only is the trauma happening to the individual who is a part of the situation or in it, but the implications that it leaves on the people who care for them or the loved ones, the family members. And it's like with anything, whether it's trauma from the loss of a loved one to homicide, trauma of a victim of sexual assault, trauma of a person who's left behind as a result of a family member at war. The trauma is real. And I think a big part of the work that you have done in the pockets of the world that you have touched is that you have helped people and communities recognize that that trauma trickles over into the community. And it plays out in our schools. It plays out in our homes. It plays out in the grocery store. It plays out in traffic. It plays out in every aspect, in every pocket of our world. And what I want people to realize is that a lot is really playing out in the lives of people in our nation as a result of this pandemic. And on top of the pandemic, we have wars. In addition to the pandemic and the wars, we have natural disasters. And so you have the evolution of compacting episodes of trauma. And I want you to close us out, Emra, with how do we reconcile all of that? But first, I want to throw it back to Mr. Smith and have him respond to those pieces related to the correlations with our locality, why we were in Afghanistan, and how we advocate here in Savannah, and why we have to continue to be the superpower that we are as America.
I'm sorry about that disconnect. First, I'd like to send my condolences to the 13 service members' families that were lost just recently in Afghanistan. Second of all, in relationship to immigrants coming to the United States, my ninth grade year, one of my ninth grade teachers was from South Africa, Mr. Breedenkamp. And he taught here in the United States for many, many years before he passed away. So I have that relationship with South Africa on that side. But when we go back to Afghanistan, the question is, what does democracy means to the average person? You know, we keep talking about the right to vote and the right to do this and do that. But some of those people are simply feeding their goats, going out to the fields and doing what they've done for many, many centuries. And until you get that literacy rate up, until they realize there is a bigger world, that there is a different way of doing things, that's the way it's going to be. I think the mission going in was to go after terrorists. The military has done an admirable job. It's just that our politicians somehow get off the rail and get off the track. We got away from what we were as Americans as far as human rights and treatment of our prisoners, and treatment of people. You know, our vice president advocated torturing these prisoners down in Guantanamo, which was unreal. And we were getting off the rail. We were getting too far away from the mission that was at hand. Going forward, we've got to still continue to fight for those that can't fight for themselves. Just recently, in 2020, we did it here in Georgia. Think about it. Think about it. We turned this state blue. There were people that were never going to vote in certain counties, but because we got them educated, people got out and talked to them. They stimulated their interest that, hey, I can make a difference now. And with one little vote, look what we have: 2 U.S. senators, 2 Democratic U.S. senators. And that's what we have to continue to do, is fight for the American rights. And it's right there in the Constitution.
And that's a nice segue to throw in a little plug or two. Mr. Smith, you are no stranger to the campaign trail. You've run for elected office on a local level as well as the state level. And I think you are a victim of that whole notion of what people do when they think the popular thing is the right thing to do. And so I'm so happy now that just what you stated, our community is starting to actualize, and that they have become more educated, they have become more engaged, and they have become more plugged in. So I'm looking forward to your name being on the ballot again in some capacity. Because I think now Savannahans recognize that it's no longer healthy and good for our community to vote for someone because of their color or their party affiliation or because they're well known. I think now is the time for people to connect to an intelligent voice, a voice of reason, and a person who is able to sort of navigate the waters of politics and not be sold out to politics. And so I want you to stay the course, sir, which is why I
Yes,
still have
ma'am.
my hooks in you. And I am not much of who I am without your tutelage. So thank you so much, sir. And
You're welcome.
I'm looking forward to having you on the show again. And so, Emra, Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Smith, you know what? I think I just pegged a new show. Mr. and Mrs. Smith at Kandily Kesha. What? We got this, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
think at least once a month we can come up with something, right?
Oh, yes.
Because I really appreciate, I don't know about the listeners tonight. I appreciate the calm in Mrs. Smith and the intellect in Mr. Smith. So it's good for me. I'm being selfish. It is my show, so I can do it. So, Mrs. Smith, give us some. Oh, and by the way, disclaimer: they're not connected. I'm just they're they're not connected romantically, I should say. It just kind of happened that way. I thought about the two of you when I knew we needed to discuss this very important topic tonight. The both of you came from two different perspectives, but we've married it well tonight. Emma, what can you offer us to close out?
Well, I think as I'd spoken about my little Hope doll, there is one. Someone made that one for me. They don't all have a hard pocket, but they come folded up like this. This is really the first one I did, and it's still done by hand. And there's the little pocket, the tea bag, the note inside.
Okay, and let's read the note. I like the note. Let's read the note that comes inside.
And you are to share this little doll when you believe what it says. You are beautiful. You are strong. Never lose hope and courage. You are loved. You matter. And why to show this little doll as we close is to really say that we each have something. You each have a worth, something you are beautiful at, and how you do it that can bring hope to someone else, your neighbor, the workplace. For me, hope starts in my home. Have I made sure that this man I live with, my husband, has hope for his days that can be complex? Do I give hope to my community, my neighbors across the road, the places that I visit, the workplaces that I may be in? Spilling over then for me, not for everyone, right? To my county, my state, my country, the world as a global place, because that's where my work is. But no matter where our reach is, you have your uniqueness that can bring light to someone. And if you have that day when you have nothing to give and your cup is empty, go get it filled. That's why there's so many organizations. That's why Kesha does what she does. And I'm sure Mr. Smith, and why I do what I do. We fill cups that have gone empty. And if mine goes empty, and it does, the more you give, the emptier it can get, and the less places pour back in. I have to know my places. Where do I get my cup filled? And I have different steps of resource. For me, quality time with God, an absolute must. My strength and energy flows from there. And when I find myself in a dip and a dark hollow, and my quality time alone, he sends somebody or sends me to somebody. And so there's always a somebody that we need to reach out with to. And if we can continue to do this, we will have a community. that can love, grow, understand, and respect one another. Easily? No, but we can. So use what's in your hand to sow a little love and hope.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to say just my faithful viewer, Mr. Ivan Cohen, says that I have a new segment called Selfishly Keisha. And so I'm going to take that, Mr. Cohen, and run with it because it's when I met Erma very shortly after I met her and had this awakening and this aha moment of turning my challenge and trials into a story that I decided to run for public office. It was very shortly after I met her and connected. So we are, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being selfish for the night, Ivan. The secret is Ivan really loves me. And Mr. Smith, thank you so much for joining us. And as I stated, we will certainly have you again. You've offered such insight tonight. You've taken us to church, to school, to college, and everywhere. And you're all those things, a soldier, a former teacher, police officer, all wrapped into one. So I'm anxious for the community to hear, meet, and learn more about you. And Erma, I'm excited about the community that you live in and for them to experience the same. And so this won't be the last time that we come together, but we are so grateful that you are here with us tonight, and we're looking forward to more to come. And I want to take a moment just to say happy birthday to my auntie Betty, one of my biggest fans. And also I want to dedicate this platform and this show of tenacity, stick-to-itness, and to believing in your story and our history to Mr. Julius Hall, who is not only running a race for a campaign for mayor of Port Wentworth, but he's just fighting for his right as an American citizen to run for office. And so keep your eyes on Port Wentworth, people. I'm Kesha Gibson Carter, and this is Kandily Kesha with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We love you, Savannah. Have a good night.